Onstage, on stage with Jim and Tom. 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 Tom and Jim.
Tonight, we welcome a man whose contributions to the Phoenix and to the North Bay hardcore scene are many. We welcome a man whose nickname often precedes him. We welcome a man of faith who loves music, who loves food, who loves people. Tonight,
Holy cow, the man just loves everything.
He read my Facebook profile, didn't he?
we welcome a man named Matt Sangervasi, but who's known to
Sangervasi.
many as Fatt Matt. Matt Sangervasi, among many other things, promoted a good number of shows here in the mid-2000s.
Yeah, from 2003 to 2006 or so, 2005.
Yeah.
And
And
you
then occasionally you still throw things at us.
Yeah, I still did it every once in a while.
Absolutely.
And you were responsible for ushering in a group of people and a type of music that
Yeah,
was
a whole
underrepresented prior to your
Absolutely.
involvement.
Yeah.
The thing about Matt Sangervasi and, well, me, is you and I are two very, very different people.
Yes.
Very different people.
Yes.
But we have two things in common that I can count that are very central to our beings. And number one is that we both started booking shows here with no experience whatsoever.
That's
Correct.
true.
And through that, developed a deep, deep connection to this place.
Yes.
And they both quickly became better bookers than myself, quite frankly.
More Jim than me.
No. I think that comment leads me to believe that you don't give yourself enough credit.
Yeah.
A lot of these people who still play punk bands and who have gone on to grow outside of Sonoma County, a lot of them owe you a debt of gratitude.
Yeah,
because
true.
you gave them a Gilman Street in their backyard, and you could argue, well, the building was already here, sure,
Yeah.
but you were the piece of the puzzle that connected this with that, and then you made a scene in this building.
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
created a scene, and he kept me plugged into it. Sometimes when I, quite frankly, wasn't necessarily willing to stay plugged in.
Yeah.
There were
you
times
over it
when
for a while.
when it felt like shows were being shoved down my throat, and I'm so glad and that's what it requires, that I had someone like Matt to push these shows back into this house, because it turns out, as you look at where a lot of those musicians have gone, holy cow, they've all gone on, many of them have gone on to do incredibly important things in music.
I think the big difference between you and me is you had more of an interest in community building and
Yeah.
connecting dots and giving opportunities to local guys, where my interest was more let's bring
grander
let's
scale.
let's bring big national bands that otherwise wouldn't play Petaluma to
Right.
Petaluma.
Right. Yeah.
And certainly you had some of that success.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you and I were trying to do two completely different things,
Yeah.
and I would argue that we both accomplished and continue to accomplish in some ways
Yeah.
those things.
But we did have one goal, which was to make this place have the best shows that we can have possible around here, and
you
make
put a
them memorable.
few of those together. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would argue that this building and your role in booking shows and in your role in being at the center of booking played a major part in establishing your identity.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
also finding your community.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
My
also,
faith too.
yeah, and that's what I was going to say, was
Yeah.
bringing some faith into that community.
Yeah.
Because through all of that, you were booking an awful lot of Christian core.
Right. Well, I was booking a lot of non-Christian bands,
Absolutely.
and my whole purpose of starting to do booking was to bring Christian bands in.
Yeah.
And all of the bands that I was bringing in had at least one Christian band on the bill.
Yes.
But then when I started getting more into the hardcore scene and really just learning about the bands and stuff, I stopped booking Christian bands, and that's where you and I kind of had that disconnect, is where you're like, I thought you were booking all Christian bands, and then I had to tell you, yeah, some of them are Christian, blah blah blah, and it never, and then it just was like, I'm not booking Christian bands. But then, something happened in my life where it really, my relationship with my wife, like we started dating, and like that really started getting me back into kind of really seeing that the faith was the most important thing in my life. And so that really changed my focus on where I was going with my shows, because I really kind of slowly moved away from booking the hardcore shows and started doing Christian hardcore.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of really was a different area.
But that's an interesting thing, because you as well, Tom, are a man of faith.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
It's interesting. Has it been a thing in your life since you were a child?
Yeah, actually it has. Because I'm such a fan of story.
Yeah.
And it was the way it was presented to me. It was more of a personal relationship. Because as you know, I'm not, or maybe you don't know, I don't go to things, and I don't do well in groups and stuff like that. So, but it was presented to me in such a way that you could have a singular relationship with Christ. And I was having a discussion with a friend one time, and when I was very young, and I was a kid that was not comfortable in the dark, and always afraid of things around corners. And in one story, I was told, well, Christ said, if you are afraid, call on me. All you have to do is tell me you believe me and call on me, and I will be there. And boom, it was like this huge light. And not only was I no longer afraid of the dark, I relish it. I love the dark. I love walking through dark forests. I love walking home at night. And when I get, but I believe that stuff. It's like I have an extra set of eyes behind me. And then, of course, I started making deals. Holy cow, you can make deals with Christ. And here's the deal. It's one of my favorite stories. I was probably in 8th grade, I bet, 8th or 9th grade, sitting on the apron of this stage. And I was looking back at the theater. It was before we opened the theater one day. It was a movie theater in those days. And we were getting ready to open it, but it hadn't opened yet. And I was sitting on the stage. I'd probably just gone backstage to get some candy or some ice cream or whatever out of the freezer we had back there. I'm sitting on the front of the stage, and I looked back at this glorious theater, and it was pristine in those days. And I said, God, I want to come back and run this place. And here I am.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Any deal, I
There's
think.
a cost.
Well, no, it's not a cost.
Price.
I think you want to get that stuff in writing. I clearly meant I wanted to come back and run this as a movie theater. I can't help but notice that that's not exactly the way it worked out. Now, I think if when I had made that deal with God, I had gotten it in writing and had a writer to go with it, I'd probably be still running this as a movie theater, which actually would not have been as great as what we've done here. So probably the way it worked out was better anyway. However, I think many of you have heard the story. This is the way it's going to work when I die. I'm going to come back to a time, and I'm being more specific now. I want better skateboards than I had when I was a kid, and I would like to have a swimming hole on the river that I grow up on.
Right.
And so I'm working on that with God right now. We're making a deal, and I don't think he's quite there with this yet, but that's what's going to happen. I'm coming back to a swimming hole and better skateboards.
I have two questions for either of you. How do you feel when somebody changes their opinion of you because they learn that you're a Christ follower, number one? And number two, how do you square the sort of hate and bigotry that has come out from the faith by an interpretation of the Bible where people use it to serve their own means to attack others, which relates to the first question, because a lot of people have seen the worst of what people can do with the Bible, and then they think that that is the only thing to be done with it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've always been about, and Gaffey can probably attest to this, is that I don't shove my faith down people's throat. And I really try to meet people where they're at and really just try to love on them for who they are. And, and if I can show Christ through my actions and through what I do, sometimes my actions are not Christ-like because, I'm human. I make mistakes. I do more than I think. Now, granted, our beliefs are a lot different on a perspective, and so. But I've always knew that Tom was somebody that I can go to for real life advice about things that that I couldn't go to maybe my past, that I wouldn't feel comfortable going to my pastor about, because we've been through so much together that I look to you like a father figure, like I always have. I've always have had my dad. And then Tom Gaffey. What
would you say is you say there's a gulf between your guys' faith?
Well, just let me go there because I'm willing to because of a lesson in junior high where I came up with the belief that what's real is magic, what's magic is real. I believe Christ is magic, but I believe Christ is real. And again, it was a journalism teacher, Hayes Hunter, it was in 9th grade probably, and one day he said, "You know why I believe in magic?" Wow, why do you believe in magic? Because a man and a woman can come together and put together two chemicals and create a life. That's magic. Well, it is alchemy when you get right down to it. That's true magic that happens before us every day, hundreds and hundreds of times a day on this planet. And there are many other examples of how that works. That is what I believe is the beauty of creation, however creation came. And I don't even want to get into that. And that is the belief of how faith can work. If you are willing to believe in a certain amount of magic, and I can only believe in that magic through Christ, and I always have, magic is real to me. And there's a lot of Christians who think, what? How does that even square with faith? Because with me, it does. That's enough for me to know. The story, as it was told to me, Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and his disciples and friends had a meal and were fairly drunk. We're tired and drunk and falling asleep. And the Garden of Gethsemane is up on the top of a ridge. And as you look down this ridge, you can see that you would be able to see the torches of the Roman soldiers coming to get him. All he would have had to do, the Roman soldiers wanted him out of the area. They didn't want any more trouble from this guy, and if they would have just chased him over the ridge out into the desert and he disappeared, they would have let him go, because they weren't going to follow this guy. He was kind of a low-level rabbi that was a rabble-rouser, but they could move him on, and then it could be somebody else's problem. He could have gone over that ridge and gone, but what he did was decide to stay, and he knew what his fate would be. And it was not going to be a comfortable 3 or 4 days or whatever it took. And this is where I don't square with the Bible, even though I've done both classes. Through the JC, I've taken the Old Testament and the New Testament. But my mind doesn't remember those things. So how many days it took from the time he was arrested in the garden to the time he ended up on the cross, I don't know. But if this is the true story of Christ, he absolutely was willing to go through hell for what he believed in. And I have to ask myself, do I have that strength? Can I be that strong if the question is ever asked to me, will you die for your faith? Even today, I don't know if I have that strength, but this is the man that I want to follow. This is the ideal that I want to follow. I want someone that strong in their faith, that strong in their beliefs, because those beliefs are what make true magic happen. And son of a gun, that happened over 2,000 years ago, and here we are talking about him today. And how many millions of people around the world are living their lives in some fashion around his word? That's magic, to me anyway, and that's strength of faith. And this is why I want to follow that faith, because this is a stronger man than I believe me, quite frankly. But what a beautiful thought. There are other stories. There's a story that James Michener tells in The Source about a rabbi who, during the Inquisition, was able to turn himself over to that Inquisition. It's so beautifully told by Michener in this one story. But this is another example of an individual giving him or herself over to their faith. And that's magic to me. But there are other Christians who believe in a different fashion. Well, that's not magic. How can you call that magic? I call it magic, and I don't care what you call it. To me, that's why I am involved with Christ. I love the sign of that strength of your faith in what you believe. I don't know if I'm that strong, but this is the guy I want to follow. And every time I get into some major situation, boom, just like I was told when I was a kid, call on Christ and he'll be there. And son of a gun, I'm still here to tell the story about it. And I believe that that's partly my faith in Christ. And thank you, Christ. So yeah, and I don't push that a lot. That's just, and that's another thing, I'm not big on telling people that, but we're talking with Matt and we're talking about Christ.
Yeah.
And that's how I believe. So I'm looking at it in a very spiritual way, but at the same time, I'm looking at it in a very personal way to me, and in a way that a lot of people don't really think that it's, I think, the correct way to see it, because I've been corrected by another friend of mine who was a minister that it doesn't work that way. When I told him the story about how I fully intend, I'm coming back to skate. What? Where does it say that? It doesn't say that. I don't like the Bible. I don't like the Constitution. Any book or paper that can be written, that can be interpreted in a million different ways by a million different people, this is not a sound vessel for me. So I'm not a Bible reader, even though I've taken the classes. I don't care. I don't care what the Bible says. I know what's in my heart, and I know the relationship I have with Christ. And that doesn't square with a lot of Christians.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's how people interpret it, and
A book that can be interpreted a million different ways. People can take the word of Christ and kill for that.
Yes,
And have.
and
that doesn't square with me.
And they can, and people make it for about their own agenda and not about what the scripture actually says about certain situations. And that's why I don't go and try to, I don't push the Bible on people a lot, and I try to meet them where they're at, and I really try to get more on a personal and a relationship basis with people, and not try to make them feel uncomfortable or put them in a situation that they're gonna people have a view on Christians that they have seen, and they have like an opinion on them. And what I strive to do is just let people know that just because I love the Lord and that I'm I'm a Christian doesn't mean I'm not a normal person. I still am a normal person.
He's not a normal person.
I'm not normal, but I mean, I'm a regular guy, but I just believe that, Christ died for my sins, and that, I'm going to go to heaven. And I don't try to gloat on that, and I don't try to shove it down people's throat. But I do want to see those people that don't believe, I do want to see them come and love the Lord and come, so I can see them in heaven again. And it does break my heart to know a lot of my friends, at least from my opinion, and what I believe the scripture says is that, I won't see them in heaven. And that's really a hard pill to swallow. And
you'll see them in heaven.
See, and that's where Matt and that's where we differ. But that's okay, because it doesn't change my opinion on you, and that doesn't change our friendship, because I know that regardless of if we disagree on things, you still value my friendship, and I still value your friendship.
Why do you think that hardcore music has this religious element, or this religious subset? It's interesting to me. When I was first coming around hardcore, Christian core shows, it blew my mind. I was an outsider at the time, and I was like, first of all, this does not seem like a religious experience.
No, not at all.
And second of all, I'm very confused.
Yeah.
But some of those bands are absolutely incredible bands.
This is, and I mean, I get it now, but I'm curious if you could maybe explain to somebody out there. I mean, hardcore music, it's loud, it's in your face,
it's heavy.
It's hard to make out what the people are singing or screaming.
Yeah.
And in a show like this, a lot of the time, a front man or front woman perhaps will address the crowd. They'll talk about the good word. They'll talk about surrendering yourself to Jesus Christ and all that.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the community. Well, there's the difference between the secular hardcore and the Christian hardcore is they're actually similar in a way, because they're all kind of like, they all have an agenda. So, or they have and what I mean by that is, in the hardcore scene, a lot of the times people are pissed off and they're upset and they're angry and they're mad. They're upset about different things that have happened in their life, or they don't like authority, or in the hardcore scene, same thing with the punk rock scene. They have about community. They're about love. About sticking with their people. They're about about achieving the goal. But the thing is, when I was booking all the hardcore shows, I felt a part of something, and I felt like I was a part of a family.
Let's go back to your wife for a moment, and then we'll move forward. But I just wanted to ask that question about how meeting her caused your faith to come back into focus. Because you said you'd moved away from booking Christian core, and meeting her was an important moment.
Meeting Rachel was really important, because Tom knows this too, that I never thought that I would find anybody that loved me and anybody that liked me. I never had a girlfriend up until her, and I went through girls that have roped me around and really messed with my heart, and really because I was a fat guy. I was really fat. I was not the most, and I still feel that way sometimes. But I mean, I really never thought I'd find anybody that would love me, and it was a lot of confidence issues, and it was a lot of, because, I had to really be okay with the fact that I'm Fatt Matt, and, that's who I am. That's kind of what I am. And I let that personality and that persona be kind of who I am. And
that was a nickname you gave to yourself, right?
No, it actually wasn't. I didn't give that name.
You insisted on it for a while.
I didn't give that name to myself. It was actually given to me by Mike Weatherly from Covenant. He was Fat Mike because he liked NoFX with Fat Mike from NoFX, and so he was Fat Mike, and then he's like, "Well, you're Fat Matt," and I was like, "Okay," and then I was like, you know what? Yeah,
You embraced it in a major way.
I did, yeah.
You embraced it in a major way. Here was my thought on it always, if you're curious.
Yeah.
This is a completely different era, but I always thought this is unfortunate because I did. I thought this is unfortunate because he is telling people to call him Fatt Matt.
Okay.
And I don't care how confident you want to show to the world, that doesn't feel good, people calling you fat. I mean,
Yeah.
it became your nickname and it changed when it became a name, I'm sure, for you. It
Yeah.
wasn't just people saying you're fat.
Right.
It was you saying, I'm Fatt Matt. That's my name.
Right.
But I always thought, like, if he's giving that name to himself, don't do that.
Right.
You don't have to play a character for these people.
Right.
Fuck these people.
Yeah.
And I always thought, like, I wish that he didn't feel like he had to do that.
Well, we discussed it a few times. I didn't like calling him Fatt Matt, and then it kind of got beat into me, and then it took me a while to get it out of my head again.
And well,
It was weird because then it became a label. It became his
it kind of came who I was because it made me, and
his brand.
It did become my brand. And here's the thing: do I like being called Fatt Matt? Yes and no, because it made me feel like people cared who I was.
It was
And
affectionate.
It was. It made me feel like, people cared, that people actually noticed me, and that's where when I became Fatt Matt, I was being noticed, and I felt like people actually cared about me and cared who I was,
And they did.
But when I was just Matt Sangervasi, it was like nobody cared, and I really didn't feel that way. I honestly didn't feel like people really accepted me, and and then when I started becoming known as the guy that's booking at the Phoenix, or works the back door, or works at the front, or whatever, the booking guy, it started making me feel a little more confident, and then I started being, like, oh, hey, I'm Fatt Matt, yeah, I don't care, and then I just started saying, okay, I'm Fatt Matt, I'm going to embrace this, and I'm going to go with it. Now, granted, did I realize that through being Fatt Matt, that all the health issues that I would have and the way that my body would feel, and the fact that I just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter, and it's like, I'm just Fatt Matt, so that's what I do, and I go eat, and make a.
It was part of the brand.
It was absolutely part of the brand, and and I embraced it, and I was
the
working.
Food was not good.
What's because you're a vegetarian, so whatever.
Did you purposefully indulge because you were like, hey, this is me?
It really was. It was an outlet. It was an outlet to go.
It was young and careless.
It was that, but it was also, I found my identity in food, and I found my identity in the music, and I found my identity in making me feel better. And now that I look back at that, I was finding my identity in things that did not make me really. It ultimately made me not feel. I don't feel good about it as when I did. I found my identity in Christ now, and I really let that be who I am. Is I'm fat, but it's like it was. I ate, and I got fat because I was depressed. And when I was in high school, I was depressed. I was, I had a lot of issues that I emotionally dealt with. That it was hard, and I was a depressed teenager. And my freshman year, I was like 130, 140. After that summer, because I was so depressed, I was like 210, 220 my sophomore year. And then my junior year and senior year, by my senior year, I was about 275. And then I just kept eating. And it was all because I found my identity in food, and I went to that as an outlet for all the pain that I was in, because I didn't feel like people liked me. And I was always looking for attention, and I would do things that, would be like, hey, look at me. And I never got noticed. And
you got noticed.
Well, I got noticed in the wrong way.
For the wrong way.
But I didn't feel like people actually cared about me. And then when I became Fatt Matt, that is where I found that people cared about me, and people actually started noticing me for who I am. And then girls started liking me, and people paid attention to me, noticing me. But of course, none of those girls actually went anywhere, because they just, I don't know. So it wasn't right. And I always had the stance that I would never date anybody that was not, at the time I would date anybody that was not a believer.
One thing about you is you are exceptionally dedicated to the things that you love.
Yes, I'm passionate about it.
We've talked about a couple chapters of your life here.
Yeah.
You dedicated yourself to the Phoenix to the extent that you put yourself into some debt, And sometimes to your own detriment, you dedicated yourself to the people who are in the bands and the building here to try to bring the most that you could here.
Yeah.
You now are married to Rachel, and it seems like you're giving your all to that. You want to.
Yes.
You want to. Well, I mean, you are.
Yeah.
You want to give her a child. You want to build a family with her. When you have children, you want them to be a part of this building.
Absolutely, about this community too. This building is a place. I've always kind of looked at it as a church to me. Like it's a mission field. It's a home, and it's a place where people can come and feel comfortable and feel like they don't have to. They could just be themselves. They don't have to feel like they fit in or not. They don't care because this building accepts everybody, and this building loves everybody. And I want and Tom absolutely he takes every one of these people that comes in here and the family, and they're his kids. And, he's, like I said earlier, he's like a dad to me, but he's also like a dad to a lot of people. And I sometimes don't think that you give yourself as much credit because you've done so much to inspire and, and make us be better people through the stuff that you do. And so I want my kids to absolutely have a relationship with Tom because this place has always been such a huge part of my life, and I want my kids to have that a part of their life as well. And and I want them to know you guys and know the legacy of where their father came from, and and who the people that have helped mold me to who I am. And I want them to be a part of this community.
Yeah,
and this family.
It wants them to be.
Yeah.
And I want to say to you, I know that the last 18 years has been a bit of a roller coaster emotionally, but as long as we got the mics going and we do have the cameras going, I just want to say to you that you are a very important piece of your community.
Thank you.
And you are a person that deserves, the focus that we're doing here tonight and so much more, because the stuff that you've brought to the building and that you've brought to your communities has touched a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt, for coming on the show tonight.
My pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun to talk to you. Tom and I think a lot of you and have been looking forward to doing this episode. So thanks for everything you've done in the building, and thanks for everything you will do in the future.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And is there anything we left out here tonight that you want to share before we close?
I just wanted to let you guys know that I have nothing but the respect for you guys in this building, and I thank you for letting me take this opportunity to come and share my experiences here. And one of the things that I have to make sure that we do before we get done with this episode here is the signature Fatt Matt thing is a selfie.
We have to do it.
And we do need to do a selfie. And so I have my camera ready like always.
How do we do a selfie?
All right. So this
well, hold on. While you're doing that, you get it queued up. I'm going to say, thanks, Matt. Thanks to everybody who listened.
You bet.
And I guess we're going to take a selfie now. So what we will do is we will say goodbye to everybody. We'll hit the outro music, and Tom, Matt, and Jim are going to take a selfie.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for listening,
Thank
everybody.
You.